Nita, can you count us in, please?
Is Rosa gonna be here with Rosa gonna be here with
Nita, can you count us in, please?
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I would like to call to order the August 14th, 2024 meeting of the Committee on Audit, Finance, Audit, and Budget. Georgette, would you please call the roll?
Director Rakeho.
Present.
Chairman Barclay. Director Jakes. Can you
Director
count us?
Lee.
Director Edie.
Here.
Director Jha. We'll note for the record that Director Jha is running late. Director Ortiz. We'll note for the record that Director Ortiz is absent. Director Jakes, you do have a quorum.
Our first order of business is the approval of the committee minutes of July 17th, 2024. May I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Director Lee, seconded by Director Edie, that the minutes from July 17th, 2024 be approved. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Rakeho?
Yes.
Chairman Barclay?
Yes.
Director Jakes?
Yes.
Director Lee?
Yes.
Director Edie?
Yes.
The motion passes.
Our next order of business is the finance report. Michelle Curran. And Tom McComb. Hey, Tom.
Good morning. Good morning, directors. So Tom McCone, CFO, certainly thank you for your support as I transition into this role. This is my first week in the role as CFO. So thank you to Michelle and the finance team for helping with that transition as well.
So we don't grill you hard.
Merely a statement of fact. For this month, Michelle is going to present the financial report. So I'll turn it over to Michelle for that.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm Michelle Curran, Deputy CFO and Comptroller. This morning, I'll review the financial results for June and year to date. Next slide, please. For the month of June, we continue to see shifts from fare box pay per use into passes compared to the budget, but overall fare and pass revenues were flat to budget. The reduced fare subsidy is also flat to budget, and non-fare box revenues are favorable to budget by $600,000, driven by higher investment income. Overall, revenues are $600,000 favorable to budget. Next slide, please. On a year-to-date basis, fare and pass revenues are up $2.5 million compared to budget and up $12 million compared to 2023. The reduced fare subsidy is flat to budget, and non-fare box revenues are up $3.3 million to budget. Overall, year-to-date revenues are $5.8 million favorable to the budget and up $14.5 million compared to 2023. Next slide, please. One more. On the expense side for June, labor is favorable $3.8 million compared to budget. Materials favorable $1.8 million this month, and fuels favorable $800,000, and power is slightly negative by $350,000. Provision for injuries and damages is flat to budget. Security services are $1.8 million unfavorable to budget as we expected due to the continued additional security measures that have been put in place. And other expenses continue to be favorable to budget at $7.9 million for the month. Overall, June expenses are positive to budget by $12.2 million. Coupled with revenues, actuals are favorable $12.8 million to budget. Next slide, please. On a year-to-date basis, labor is favorable $39 million to budget. Materials favorable $1.6 million. Fuels positive $4.3 million, and power is positive $1.3 million. Provision for injuries and damages is flat to budget. Security services are unfavorable $12.4 million to budget, and other expenses are favorable $25.8 million. Overall, year-to-date expenses through June are positive to budget by $59.7 million, and revenues coupled with expenses are positive $65.5 million to budget. Next slide, please. With regard to our public funding revenues, sales tax collections for April were flat to budget. The July collection for public transportation funds was $400,000 favorable to budget, and real estate transfer tax or RET revenues for June was unfavorable $2.7 million to budget due to the extended slow real estate market fueled by interest rates remaining at higher levels for a longer period. And the related PTF on RET was 600,000 unfavorable to budget. Overall, for the month, public funding revenues were unfavorable, $2.9 million compared to budget. Next slide, please. For the year to date, sales tax and related PTF revenues continue to perform well compared to budget, but the favorable variance is more than offset by the continued depression in the real estate market. Public funding year to date is slightly negative to budget by overall $1.2 million. Next slide, please. With regard to our federal relief funding, for the month, we'll draw 27 million of CRISA, ARP formula, and discretionary funds. Overall, we've drawn about 62% of our federal relief funds, and with approximately $850 million remaining. Next slide, please. And there have been no recent changes on the commodity side. We've locked in pricing on 75% of our fuel for 2024 and 2025. And we've started locking in pricing for 2026 as well at 10%. We also locked in pricing through 2024 for power and 2026 for natural gas. We'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
So, looking ahead, as far as the budget of next year, when the budget is being shaped, and it's really good for you as well, Tom, will the budget be shaped based upon the current interest rates as it relates to real estate? Or are you going to look at it now, because I know that rates are going down, and then shape the budget to what's going on now? Or will you do it based upon what has happened?
You're talking
Budget next year.
about overall or for the real estate? Overall, we look at, where we are now, but also projecting forward what we expect to happen. So you'd mentioned real estate. Next year, we expect to reduce the real estate transfer tax revenue somewhat because, the real estate market was expected to come back earlier this year. Interest rates were expected to be cut earlier in the year. In January, February, they were expected to be cut. We're going into September and they still haven't done anything with interest rates. So at the time of budgeting last year, we fully expected the real estate market to have rebounded somewhat by now. But it's really continuing on the path it was last year.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
We'll take additional questions. Director Raquejo?
No questions.
Director Ja? Chairman Barclay?
No questions.
Director Lee?
No question. Thank you.
Director Eady?
Yes, when I looked at the financial results for June, small matter maybe, but the advertising charter and concessions revenue and it was shown unfavorable budget. I was wondering, is that the result, maybe some lack of sales incentives? What contributed to that? And how do you think that can be reversed?
Yeah, the advertising market has, as there's talks about potential recession, the advertising market has been strained for some time. So we have seen a little bit of lower advertising revenue than what we had estimated when we did the budget last year.
Thank you.
Director Jakes, there are no further questions.
Thank you.
Thank you. We will now review an ordinance authorizing the purchase of real property located at 119th and Cottage Grove. The exact address is 11900. Red Line Extension Project. Bill Mooney.
Good morning. Bill Mooney, your Chief Infrastructure Officer. Staff recommends approval of an ordinance authorizing the purchase of real property located at 11900 South Cottage Grove in support of the Red Line Extension Project. Under ordinance number 022-118, staff has previously identified and the board designated multiple properties, including this property, for acquisition and authorized negotiations for the purchase of the parcel. CTA is in the process of acquiring the parcel located at 11900 South Cottage Grove and has negotiated a purchase price of $6,500,000. To the ordinance, additional board approval is required if the purchase price exceeds $1 million. I'll be happy to take any questions on this item.
I have no questions, Bill.
Director Raquejo?
Just a question around, when it comes to these purchases of real estate that I assume are gonna start like happening faster now. How are they being aligned with the road transits? A plan that the city and CTA have in agreed upon.
Yeah, I'm glad to touch a little bit on that. So I would actually say the opposite, sir, is that they're starting to slow down. So we are significantly bought out in the real estate required for this project. We are down to kind of the last, dozen plus parcels, this being probably the most significant of the parcels left out there. When we identified the parcels for acquisition, it was just shy of about 200 or so that were in the initial ordinance, those were parcels that were directly required for the construction of the project, either for the right of way necessary, the station footprints, or for construction staging. Many of the parcels we identified for construction staging were parcels that were identified as opportunity sites to be able to be supported in transit supportive development plan and ultimately would be released back to the community for opportunities in line with what was identified in that plan, which really, as I know you're aware and for others, was a significant aspect of the project's commitment to redevelopment in this community. We partnered with the Chicago Department of Planning and Development as a kind of joint venture to bring this forward to the Plan Commission as the vision for how redevelopment could be encouraged and grown and really grown from the roots of that community and the goals of that community. So.
Thank you.
Director Ja,
No questions.
Chairman Barclay,
No questions.
Director Lee,
No questions. Thanks, Bill.
Director Eady,
No questions.
Director Jakes, there are no further questions.
May I now have leave to place this on the omnibus for board approval?
So moved. So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Director Ja, seconded by Director Eady, that this item be placed on the omnibus for board approval. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Rekejo,
Yes.
Director Ja,
Yes.
Chairman Barclay,
Yes.
Director Jakes,
Yes.
Director Lee, Director Eady.
Yes.
Motion passes.
We will now, I'm sorry.
You may now move to agenda item number 5.
We will now review an ordinance consenting to the amendment of the boundary of the Newport Avenue Landmark District, which includes Chicago Transit Authority property located at 945-953 West Newport Avenue, Chicago, on the red line. Bill.
Staff recommends approval of an ordinance authorizing consent to the amendment of a boundary of the Newport Avenue Landmark District, which contains CTA property located at 945 to 953 West Newport Avenue, commonly known as the Von Travers Building. On December 14, 2016, the CTA purchased the Von Travers Building, which is now located at 945, 953 West Newport Avenue, for the Red Purple Modernization Project. Von Travers Building was located in the city's Newport Avenue Landmark District at the time of the purchase and was physically relocated approximately 28 feet immediately west from its original location as part of the RPM project. The City of Chicago's Commission on Chicago Landmarks has formally requested CTA consent to amend the current boundary of the district to accurately reflect the new location of the Von Travers Building. CTA's continued consent will not impact the CTA operation, and staff recommends approval.
I have no questions.
Director Rekejo,
No question.
Director Ja,
Questions.
Chairman Barclay,
No question.
Director Lee,
No questions.
Director Eady,
No question.
Director Jakes, there are no further questions.
I now have leave to place this item on the omnibus for board approval.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Director Ja, seconded by Director Eady, that this item be placed on the omnibus for board approval. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Rekejo,
Yes.
Director Ja,
Yes.
Chairman Barclay,
Yes.
Director Jakes,
Yes.
Director Lee, Director Eady.
Yes.
The motion passes. You may now move to agenda item number 6.
Review now an ordinance authorizing a license agreement with, and forgive me if I'm pronouncing his name incorrectly, Jamil Salmon for real property located at 6052 South Calumet Avenue /320-332 East 61st Street, Chicago, authorizing the acquisition of the property. Bill.
Thank you. Real estate staff recommends approval of an ordinance authorizing a license agreement for property located at 6052 South Calumet Avenue, 320 to 332 East 61st Street, as well as authorizing the acquisition of the property. CTA has been using the property for staging of track reconstruction activities throughout the CTA system. The property is owned by Jamil Salomon and consists of approximately 11,000 square feet of unimproved land. Property is still required for CTA maintenance purposes, and staff recommends that the board approve a one-year license agreement for the property, as well as designate the property for acquisition and authorize the general counsel and chief infrastructure officer to purchase the property if the purchase price does not exceed $1 million. The license agreement, which is set to commence September 1st, 2024 and end August 31st, 2025, with a monthly license fee of $850, would terminate upon CTA's acquisition of the property. Glad to answer questions on this item.
Yeah, so, are we leasing the property now?
We are currently asking for a license. So we've been using the property under a right of entry agreement, which the term of ability for staff to execute is exhausted at this point. And so we're asking for the continued use of the property under the authority of a license agreement while we negotiate for a purchase of the property.
Okay, thank you. No further questions.
Director Raquejo?
What are some of the future uses of the property if CTA was to acquire?
So this is directly adjacent to a major storage yard we have where we also hold all of our material for track. So we've been using it for the construction of track panels that then allow us to renew parts of the system. We can stage material there, build the panels, and then ship them out on what we call a work train, which is a rail-borne kind of delivery system we use to deliver material throughout the system. So it's really kind of strategically located to a couple other facilities that we use to support our maintenance operations. And the intended use would be to continue to support maintenance. That's
Director Ja? Chairman Barclay?
What were the terms before?
it was a month-to-month right of entry agreement, $850 a month.
Director Lee?
No questions. Thanks.
Director Eady?
I guess my question is, how did, what calculations were made come to that amount for the rent?
The initial rental rate was based on kind of a fair market value analysis by our real estate department. Any acquisition would be supported by a full-fledged appraisal that we would make the offer of, and oftentimes includes a review appraisal as well.
Director Jakes, there are no further questions.
May I now have leave to place this on the omnibus for board approval?
So move.
Second,
It's been moved by Director Ja, seconded by Director Eady, that the item be placed on the omnibus for board approval. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Eady?
yes.
Director Lee?
Yes.
Director Jakes?
Yes.
Chairman Barclay?
Yes.
Director Ja?
Yes.
Director Raquejo?
Yes.
The motion passes. You may now move to agenda item number 7.
Our next order of business today is the review of contract numbers A1 through A3, transit operations. I have no questions.
Director Raquejo?
Yes.
Any questions?
Oh, no.
Director Ja, any questions?
No questions.
Chairman Barclay?
No questions.
Director Lee?
No questions.
Director Eady?
No question.
Director Jakes, you may now proceed to contracts number B1 and B through B3.
Our next order of business today is the review of contract number B1 through B3, contract awards for infrastructure. I have no questions.
Director Raquejo, any questions?
No questions.
Director Ja?
No questions.
Chairman Barclay?
No questions.
Director Lee?
No.
Director Eady?
No question.
Director Jakes, we may now proceed to contract E1.
Our next order of business today is the review of contract number E1, contract awards for communications. No questions.
Director Raquejo?
No questions.
Director Ja?
Questions.
Chairman Barclay?
No questions.
Director Lee?
None.
Director Eady?
No question.
Director Jakes, you may now proceed to contract G1.
I would, but I don't see G1 here.
Okay, let's not go there.
Can you?
Contract F1, my apologies.
Oh, okay. Our next order of business today is the review of contract number F1 and contract award for administration. No questions.
Director Raquejo?
No questions.
Director Ja?
Questions.
Chairman Barclay?
No questions.
Director Lee? Director Eady?
No question.
There are no further questions. You may now proceed to contract H1.
Next order of business is the review of contract number H1, contract award for administration. I have no question.
Director Raquejo?
No questions.
Director Ja?
Questions.
Chairman Barclay?
No questions.
Director Lee?
None.
Director Eady?
Okay, what I've cited here, there was a tremendous change order amount or percentage. It is now up to some 78%. If someone could give me, if you could give me to understand, was that foreseen, projected?
It was not foreseen, Director. Our intention was to bring a new contract to the board today for your approval. However, the procurement process took a little bit longer than we anticipated. It is a very important contract for the CTA. So the evaluators had a lot of questions. They want to make sure that they really understood what was being offered to us. And our intention is now to take it to October board. We don't anticipate needing to spend all of these funds, but we needed to have the funds here so that we don't lose, so there's no break in service.
Okay. Yeah, it was just a large percentage, just was alarming for me.
It is, but as I say, we don't intend to spend all of that.
Okay.
Director Jakes, there are no further questions. You may now proceed to contracts I-1 and I-2.
Our next order of business is the review of contracts numbers I-1 and I-2 contract awards for law. No questions.
Director Raquel, any questions? Director Ja?
No questions.
Chairman Barclay?
No questions.
Director Lee? Director Eady?
No question.
Director Jakes, there are no further questions and there are no further contracts for review.
Since there are no further questions on the contracts, may I have leave to place the 11 contracts on the omnibus?
So moved.
Second,
It's been moved by Director Ja, seconded by Director Eady to place the 11 contracts on the omnibus. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Raquel?
Yes.
Director Ja? Chairman Barclay?
Yes.
Director Jakes?
Yes.
Director Lee?
Yes.
Director Eady?
yes,
The motion passes.
Since there's no further business to come before the committee, may I have a motion to approve the omnibus and recommend the omnibus for board approval?
So moved.
second,
It's been moved by Director Ja, seconded by Director Eady that the omnibus be approved and recommended for board approval. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Raquel?
Yes.
Director Ja? Chairman Barclay?
Yes.
Director Jakes?
Yes.
Director Lee?
Yes.
Director Eady?
yes.
The motion passes. May now proceed to agenda item number 8.
And at 9:59, may I finally have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second,
It's been moved by Director Ja, seconded by Director Eady that the meeting of the Finance, Audit and Budget Committee for August 14, 2024 be adjourned. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Raquel?
Yes.
Director Ja?
Yes.
Chairman Barclay?
Yes.
Director Jakes?
Yes.
Director Lee?
Yes.
Director Eady?
yes.
The motion passes.
We are.
Chairman Barclay,
Here.
Director Jakes,
Here.
Director Lee, Director Eady,
Here.
Chairman Barclay, there is a quorum.
Thank you. Our next order of business is the approval of the minutes of the regular board meeting of July 17th, 2024. May I have a motion to approve?
So move.
Second.
It's been moved by Director Ja, seconded by Director Eady, that the minutes from the CTA regular board meeting of July 17th, 2024 be approved. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Burkejo,
Yes.
Director Ja,
Yes.
Chairman Barclay,
Yes.
Director Jakes,
Yes.
Director Lee,
Yes.
Director Eady.
Yes.
The motion to approve the minutes passes.
Our next order of business is a report from our Ethics Committee. I'd like to welcome Jessica Pipersborough, our Ethics Committee Chairperson.
She is appearing remotely.
Good morning, everyone. Let me do a sound check. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. My name is Jessica Pipersberg. I'm the chair of the Ethics Committee. We wanted to deliver a quarterly report to the board. We can go to the next slide. The Ethics Committee is
Ms.
comprised of...
Pipersberg, can you hold
Yeah.
on for 1 second? We don't see the slideshow.
Oh, I'm sorry.
If you can please proceed orally, we're gonna find the slideshow.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Pipersberg.
Absolutely, I can proceed orally. So the Ethics Committee is comprised of 3 volunteer professionals. We meet quarterly. For this year, we've met on April 4th and July 31st. The Ethics Committee is staffed by the Ethics Officer, Compliance Policy and Risk Attorneys, and the Secretary of the Board. And we make recommendations to the board of findings of ethics violations and advisory opinions. And we will always seek board approval. The role of the Ethics Committee is to uphold the highest ethical conduct in CTA by enforcing the ethics ordinance. Some of the issues that we may be involved in is issues of conflicts of interest, nepotism, gift bans, post-employment, prohibited political activity. We also may review advisory opinions on routine matters and ethics committee matters. And we may also advise on internal investigations that arise from complaints and referrals from the Office of the Inspector General. At our last meeting on July 31st, we did review and recommend the approval of updates to the ethics rules and investigation process amendments. And I believe that Deputy General Counsel Sisavan Baker is going to present at a high level some of the substantive updates to the ethics rules that we're recommending approval for.
Thank you, Jessica. Yes, that's correct. Sisavan Baker, Deputy General Counsel and Ethics Officer. We are looking to really make the ethics program here at CTA quite robust. And to do so, we are updating the rules and investigation process. Generally, it is meant to clarify and simplify the text so that everyone can understand this. And also, we have added non-gendered terms. In addition, it hasn't been updated since before the pandemic. So we are going to update items to allow the committee meetings to occur via video conferencing pursuant to the OMA rules. We're going to permit notices on websites. We are allowing for emailed complaints rather than just accepting complaints via writing. And of course, we're going to ensure compliance with FOIA. As I indicated, we want to really make the program robust. And so by that, we are going to allow for anonymous complaints. And also we're going to allow for complaints that does not identify the target of the investigation, that gives the committee more flexibility in their work. We have created standards so that we can ensure that due process is in the process. Specifically, we are creating a finding to open an investigation under the preponderance of the evidence standard. We're also going to do administrative closures for incomplete, untimely, or complaints that we have no jurisdiction over. And finally, to ensure that the facts are determined equitably, we are going to allow a hearing officer to hear facts from both our investigators and the respondent and or target of the investigation before findings are made. And because the Ethics Committee only meets quarterly, we felt that in incidents where the committee needs to refer to law enforcement or the Office of the Inspector General, that will be done through the General Counsel's office instead of being done through the committee and then forwarded to this board. And finally, just to reiterate, this is meant to supplement the work that the Office of the Executive Inspector General does and what law enforcement does. And so once they take over an investigation, this Ethics Committee will suspend their investigation. That is the conclusion of my amendment.
Thank you. And that's the conclusion of the presentation and quarterly report of the Ethics Committee. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your report. Our next order of business on the agenda will be the ADA Advisory Committee report, which will be given by Laura Saltzman, who is chair of the ADA Advisory Committee.
Hey everyone, can you hear me?
It's a little garbled, Ms. Saltzman.
Hello? Can you hear me better now? Is it
Yes.
still garbled?
No.
Okay, great. Thank you. Sorry about that. So hello, my name is Laura Saltzman, and I'm the chair of the ADA Advisory Committee and a senior policy analyst for Access Living. Nice to see you all again. The committee met last month on July 8th, 2024. In the meeting, we discussed updates to ASAP and RPM presented by Steve Masheri and Jeff Wilson. Rajiv Pinto and Julian Silva from CDOT also presented on Damon and Lake and State and Lake stations. We appreciated CDOT attending and answering questions. I hope it becomes a regular occurrence, especially as there are no corresponding ADA committees at CDOT. The information and clarifications presented were quite helpful. We also heard about CTA's website procedure for elevator status and how to look at the website for more information regarding elevator outages. This was particularly appreciated because it was done in response to questions raised in earlier meetings. The committee expressed concerns over sticker signs being too small to notice from afar when an elevator goes down and how the new Damon station would benefit from a bus shelter and APS in the crosswalk. We had a wayfinding presentation from Tony Capoletta. Tony covered a variety of wayfinding methods for signage. The committee asked questions regarding bus relocation, reroutes, announcements, and accessibility for customers who are blind or visually impaired. As someone with spatial and mapping learning disabilities, I really appreciate the thoughtfulness that went into the changes made to wayfinding. I encourage CTA to make sure to communicate these changes so people are aware of them and so that they understand why they were made. Our last presentation was on planning accessible rail and bus trips and chatbot updates from Lucy and Liz Laporez. Lucian presented the concerns of bus accessibility Lucian presented the concerns of bus accessibility transparency when planning a trip while using third-party apps and how currently all stops are considered accessible, even when some of the locations around the region may not be accessible. The committee had various opinions on bus stop accessibility and will need time to process the information to give a recommendation. A question was asked on if CDOT has access to the inaccessible bus stop locations. It was explained that CDOT has a small version of the list as they are working to make 100 bus stops accessible per year. CTA communicated that the original 100 stops have yet to be fully addressed, let alone any additional stops. We appreciate the focus on Disability Pride Month last month and CTA's marketing campaign on accessibility tips to help the community navigate the system. Videos are being posted weekly on CTA's social media. Between our meeting and today, there is an ASAP update released July 31st. I'm concerned that the committee was not alerted to the changes prior to the press release. The largest changes announced were increased costs, although I gather this reflects countrywide issues related to construction. I do have concerns about the length of time it takes to get new elevators in, but most importantly, I think, is that CTA briefs the public more proactively on their plans and work, especially when it comes to accessibility. The last thing we discussed in the meeting was the request made by this committee, by this board, by the last the last thing we discussed in the meeting was the request made regarding of the committee of priorities by their board. I think general feelings can be sorted into 3 buckets. The first is the transportation system as a whole. Making sure the entire trip and path of travel is accessible, whether that means communicating and aligning transportation routes and times to make sure transfers can be made in a timely fashion, or that the route to an accessible station has sidewalks and intersections that are usable. I understand that this is not entirely within the CTA's control. We encourage collaboration with agencies to help reduce this issue. It feels necessary to note that a genuine problem at times is the fact that CTA can be unilaterally overruled by CDOT, who does not seem to consider accessibility in the same way. This may be due to any number of reasons, including not having an ADA person or committee, but my concern is that the result puts disabled people in a worse position. A key example of why this is a problem was unfortunately illustrated quite recently. The design that CDOT and IDOT have selected for the renovation of North DuSable Lakeshore Drive manages to feature 0 dedicated bus lanes. Buses are one of the most accessible options we have. This is an accessibility issue. In a recent CTA survey, the #1 non-accessibility improvement that disabled people listed was improved reliability and speed of buses. Redefine the Drive was an opportunity to make a meaningful improvement in that direction. But for the most part, any improvements merely were a byproduct of a private car-centric design. I would ask that board members who have relationships with people at the city and state level to reach out to them about this. There is no prioritizing disabled people if you are not prioritizing transit. It is not just about this design, but about shifting agency priorities. The state and city departments of transportation need to be better at considering disabled people, which includes accounting for accessible transit more in the entire path of travel. If the needs of disabled people matter, then the current design cannot be considered acceptable. The second bucket would be wayfinding and signage, physical infrastructure that is not ASAP. We, of course, appreciate the work CTA has done on the local, state, and federal level to make legacy rail stations more accessible. But there are still too many times and locations that are not accessible for disabled people. And when it comes to wayfinding, in particular, low vision and blind people specifically, folks for whom driving is not an option, who disproportionately need to rely on a transit system, which means we need bus stops that can be located and accessible information provided in a range of ways, similar to those who are not low vision or blind. We need better alerts and audio information on buses and trains, and there to be better training if those announcements are not working. Final bucket, training and customer service positions that may be a better fit than what we currently have. The first would be a more career-oriented CSA, CSR position, one that provides full benefits and salary and consequently has the training and responsibilities to match. There are significant issues the community faces when it comes to being able to ask for assistance with things like gap fillers, notifying if elevators are out, or wayfinding. And while there are a number of people who help, this is a job that is nonetheless not seen as permanent and not treated as such by the agency. This is a first point of contact that many people have within the system. Incidentally, it is also something that I have found many people who do not have disabilities would find valuable as well. The second would be non-law enforcement options who are trained to de-escalate in situations where people are agitated and provide referral services or community supports where appropriate. This would align the CTA with a state law called CESA that will require non-law enforcement response for nonviolent situations for people in crisis, and statements in support of this model by the mayor about the importance of switching to experts appropriate to the issue, rather than treating every problem as needing a one-size-fits-all response. Much like physical health conditions require an appropriate medical response, so too do psychiatric disabilities. Happy to talk about any of these priorities more in depth or answer any questions now or in the future. These are all the updates on the ADA Advisory Committee. Thank you.
Questions for me?
Director Raquejo.
Yes, first of all, I wanted to thank Laura for doing something very difficult, which is to prioritize 3 things out of a long list of needs in a committee that I'm sure has a lot of diversity of opinion. So thanks for boiling it down for us. You've done the work that we asked for. And I guess I wanted to ask now, and maybe this is not just for Laura, but for CTA too. One of the recurring themes here is the relationship between a CTA and CDOT, and also with other agencies in the city, mayor's office for people with disabilities, CMAP, et cetera. What would it look like to have more functional, connected, responsive relationship among agencies whose responsibility is to, number one, center transit, and number two, make it equitable, because this is an equity issue clearly, and I wonder what that relationship could look like. I know last time we had this conversation, CTA was going to reach out to CDOT and work at the leadership level, which is great to have conversations between president, commissioner, et cetera. But it seems like this is a recurring theme and more systemic than that. So I'm interested in what would it look like, again, to have a system process where all these agencies are in sync and we don't have examples like the one Laura mentioned, which I share the concerns about Lakeshore Drive's redevelopment as a car-centric artery. So what would that look like?
Let me try to at least articulate that to some degree. And as you indicated, Director, you and I have had a conversation about some of these issues. There obviously are a lot of competing interests involved in a lot of the decisions that we're talking about. And certainly CTA advocates for and certainly attempts to push decisions that we believe are in the best interest of public transportation. Recognizing that we don't necessarily have the ultimate decision around what we do or how we do it in certain circumstances. We understand the importance of really voices like the ones you're hearing here to amplify some of the concerns that we may have raised about certain decisions or approaches that may be taken on a myriad of issues. I don't want to suggest that it's just around one topic. This is part of an ongoing dialogue that we have with our appropriate agencies at the city, in which clearly, we advocate for a particular point of view, and we try to get support for that, as is the case in any number of decisions that the city has to make about various issues. I think it's helpful, and we should have a conversation about maybe getting some of those other departments to come appear for our advisory committee and discuss and explain some of their decision-making directly, as opposed to CTA trying to explain on their behalf. I think it's also important that maybe they hear directly from the constituents who represent our communities, because that certainly is what we're trying to convey in the conversations that we have. And I think it could help promote more dialogue of the nature you're talking about. At the top level, like you said, I talk regularly with the commissioners who are both oversee that and the mayor's office. But there's a lot of minutia that happens at a lower level, as is the case in any bureaucracy, where trying to culturally get people aligned is a much more bigger challenge. I know how the mayor feels broadly about these issues. I know he is committed to supporting diversity and inclusivity in the decision-making process that the city engages in, as well as that the CTA engages in. And I don't deny that there's need for more improvement in that area. We're committed to continuing to do that. I think just as importantly, we're committed to making sure we're partnering with our advisory committee, who exists for exactly that purpose, to provide that kind of input, to make sure that their input is being heard, not just by CTA, but by the other people who actually make some of these decisions. And let me commit that we're going to work with the committee to find a way to better integrate those other partners into those discussions in a way that will provide meaningful opportunity for them to be engaged.
Thank you. I appreciate those thoughts. And Laura, any thoughts on your end on what the next step could look like to resolve this more systemic coordination, collaboration issues? One thing that I wanted to share is that I hear you, President Carter, on the competing interests. I always get a little worried when I hear that, because we have made a commitment as a city to prioritize transit, prioritize pedestrian, prioritize people with disabilities, Black and brown communities, et cetera. So whenever that conflict arises, we have said, okay, but here's what the priority should be. And I just don't see that. I see car-centric development being treated on the same level and other things. So anyway, just wanted to put that out there before asking Laura what her thoughts are.
Yeah, thank you, and I appreciate the comments both of you made. I would agree in terms of having them present, minimally having them present and hear from folks directly. I think that is incredibly important. It is incredibly important. Sometimes there are clarifications and there's more information being presented, but I also think that they need to hear from folks more directly. And I do have concerns about the extent to which, a lot of these things are being prioritized. Especially when, I think that there are times where folks are not clear on why transit doesn't exist to the extent that they want it to exist, and why the design is the way it is. But the result is that it is definitely worse service for disabled people. I think as we consider climate change, it's a problem. So yeah, I do think that these things need to be prioritized more in terms of what that would look like. I think that either the departments of transportation need to have more people within their agencies that also focus on transit, or they need to not have a unilateral veto on the streets. But I realize that that's not something CTA can decide on. But that's why I also wanted to make the point to encourage the board to reach out to folks, because I do think this is a bigger conversation.
Thanks.
Can I just make one other comment? I don't disagree with the comments that Laura's making, and I think that the collective voices of both our committee, our board members, and others does make a difference. With regards to North Lakeshore Drive, they're still in the decision-making process. Certainly, as all of you know, there was a hearing which an option was presented. I think that it was heard very loud and clear what a lot of people thought of that option. I don't know, and I don't have a crystal ball as to whether that will influence the final outcome of this process one way or another, but certainly I do know that it was heard. And I think that kind of advocacy is always very helpful because it amplifies a lot of what CTA tries to convey in terms of what we believe is the position on various issues and how it may affect our customers. Recognizing that CDOT is balancing more issues than just CTA in that conversation.
Director Jha, any questions?
No questions, but I think part of last board meeting's discussion of after was also realizing that there's coordination required. I think there is also what we have control over. And I think Abu and I talked about that is kind of publishing sort of where do we stand today in terms of what we can do internally, where we have control over, and then just making that as part of a plan. If there are, we have a lot of funding issues, but if there are sources of funding available, like if we can look into prioritizing some of these, at least the existing stations that we've heard multiple times that are not compliant, that we are able to prioritize those and put that in the plan as we're, moving on some modernization efforts. So that was my recommendation. I think that just at the ground level, small steps that we can take, let's keep doing that while we're focusing on larger coordination and, working with CDOT. But I also totally agree that folks on the board who have relationship, I definitely do, is just take some of this conversation back and start those. So I'm definitely committed to that.
Chairman Barclay?
No comment.
Director Jakes?
Who's responsible for getting back to the ADA committee once for our end, not CDOT, for when things are improved on our end?
The point person for the ADA committee is our Chief Planning and Innovation Officer, Molly Poppy.
Okay.
She obviously coordinates, particularly on a lot of the things you're talking about with our infrastructure department that ultimately, is making certain capital investments particularly upgrades to elevators and escalators, as well as our operations department when it comes to improving communications to our customers about issues about accessibility and how we handle it. So it's a joint effort departmental wise, but it is led by our planning and innovation department.
Is there a system in place that person or personal persons in every section of the city goes by just to look and see if we are ADA compliant? Or is it you have to bring it to our attention and then we'll see about it?
No, and we obviously work to address compliance issues throughout our system on a regular basis. However, benefits of the advisory is input on things that we may not recognize. Sure. That's why they exist and that's why their feedback is important. We don't expect everything to be perfect. We do need their input in terms of where and how we should prioritize certain issues as relates to the limited resources that we may have. And I think that input is valuable. I certainly listened very closely to the comments that they were just making and certainly recognize that there's some areas of improvement that we can make that are within our control, to your point, that are not necessarily driven by other outside sources, particularly around community. Providing the best information possible to the disability community about CTA. I also just want to acknowledge that certainly if we misstepped on the rollout of the ASAP program, we will remedy that going forward. It's certainly always been my intention that the committee as well as the disability community in general is aware of in advance of what we're doing and how we're doing it. Obviously, the updates of the plan was a really big deal. It still exists as a roadmap for getting the funding that we need to address our accessibility issues going forward. And I can honestly tell you, both to the committee and to the rest of the board, no one will be happier than me if I can find the money to accelerate the timeline on that plan. That timeline is not indicative of what I want to do. It's indicative of what I'm forced to do because I don't have the money to do it faster. And one of the benefits that has occurred in the past from our ability to put on paper what exactly it takes to get this done is that we have gotten more funds to support it than we have in the past, and we'll continue to pursue that as we move forward.
Thank you.
Those are the questions.
Director Lee?
No questions, just a comment more that first, thanks Laura for your report and always bringing, bubbling them up to us. And as a person who used to serve on the ADA Advisory Committee, thank you for your service. But I also would like to lean in on the comments said earlier and how we can work together with CDOT, because maybe we can invite them here and have a dialogue, just more opportunities for collaboration. I think it underscores that accessibility benefits everyone. It's not just the disability community. If everybody can get to a station easily, right? It's if there's an elevator available that benefits so many more people than just people with disabilities. And so welcoming opportunities to collaborate at all the levels with CDOT, because I know it's competing priorities, but at the end of the day, accessibility benefits everyone. So there shouldn't be any competing priorities. So just that comment. Thank you.
I'd like to remind everybody that accessibility is a civil right. So from a prioritization standpoint, it does carry a lot more weight in terms of where we should be focusing our attention. I will reach out to the CDOT commissioner directly and talk to him about how we might get CDOT more engaged in working with CTA publicly in terms of possibly attending future meetings, be it board meetings if you'd like to hear from directly, or also the advisory committee future.
Director Eady?
No question.
Chairman Barclay, there are no further questions.
Thank you, Georgette. Our next order of business is public comment. Georgette.
Chairman Barclay, we have 4 in-person public comments for today. I would also like to note for the record that we have received a written public comment submitted by Michael Lafargue, who is the president of the Greater Far South Halsted Chamber of Commerce, in which he is congratulating President Carter and the Chicago Transit Authority as it relates to the Red Line Extension project. We also have a written public comment from John Paul Jones, who is the co-founder of the Red Line Extension TIF Coalition. And John Paul Jones has advanced to us a correspondence that was sent to Senator Tammy Duckworth as it relates to that coalition's support of the Red Line Extension Project. And he also has requested that we note for the record that the daughter of the deceased founder and former president of the Red Line Extension TIP Coalition, Minister Sylvia Y. Jones, is present here today. I believe her name is Ms. Welch, and we are acknowledging Ms. Welch's presence here in honor of her mother and the work that she's done. The first public speaker for today will be Alderman Ronnie Mosley from that fantastic 21st Ward where I live. So I would like to ask him to come forward. Alderman Mosley, his office is only 3 blocks away from my house. You may have a seat.
Sounds like it's very convenient, just like public transportation.
How about that? I'd like to advise you that you do have 3 minutes, despite how much I like you. You have 3 minutes to speak, and your time starts now.
Great. No, thank you so much. Again, good morning all. My name is Ronnie Mosley, and I have the pleasure of serving as alderman of the 21st Ward on the south side of Chicago. And so it's no surprise that transportation has always been, in essence, a central part of the 21st Ward. To understand that this red line extension isn't just about where the tracks will be laid. It's about creating connections, breaking down barriers in the far south side. And it's how hard or how easy we make life for our residents. Can you get to work, or will companies come to you? Will your home require you to have a car? What amenities are near you? These questions help transcend a transit plan, and the answers create a blueprint for our community's future. And the CTA's Red Line team gets that. They've gone beyond the mandated community meetings and are part of our community. They have a presence at community events. They support local stores with their dollars, and most importantly, I would say, they help residents and entrepreneurs do business with CTA. You know, so a former transportation secretary said that if we are only planning for what we have now, then we are already behind the curve. And we all know that this plan has been worked on tirelessly for decades from the community, for the community, by the community. So I'm thankful to President Carter for you taking on this initiative and seeing it through. Thank you to this board, Chairman Barclay, for your leadership. This is a transformation project. It is not lost on any of us. And I'm thankful that we are able to travel together to ensure that this project comes to fruition and that it will transform the entire region of the south side of Chicago and the Southland of Cook County. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And you have the support of the 21st Ward.
Thank you. Our next public comment speaker is Reverend Albert Shears. Morning.
Good morning to each of you. Thank you so much for having us. The Red Line Extension Project has finally come into fruition after more than 20 years, although it's been an idea on the CTA drawing board for more than half a century. Therefore, we are indeed excited that the extension of the CTA Red Line is becoming a reality. This is a historical moment in time, for it is the largest public infrastructure project developed for underserved communities in the United States of America. As Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said when he lived and worked in Chicago in the mid-1960s, this project is a check issued as a down payment to repair the damage of planned segregation, which Chicago is famous for. The transportation desert on the far south side is the historic result of Chicago's segregation by design policies. But while this idea sit gathering dust on the drawing board, it began to come alive as it was ignited and sustained because of a faith-based community organization called Developing Communities Project, who initiated, researched, advocated, planned, partnered, and worked tirelessly to achieve this goal. It was Developing Communities Project who collaborated with public, private, and academic entities, and yes, with CTA. Though DCP is as a formal organization, is no longer active, we are assured that the work we've done will live in perpetuity in at least three significant ways. Number one, through other individuals and organizations who continue to advocate for the equity and justice for all things related to this extension project. Everything from workforce development to transit-oriented development, including contractual opportunities for local business development, and right down to everyday residents who are just looking for a way out of the transportation desert that they and their families have had to live in far too long. We trust that CTA will hear their voices and partner with them in every aspect of the project going forward, most especially in drawing on the community residents for employment opportunities when it comes to working on the project. We who have initiated and nurtured this process will be watching closely. And number two, the Red Line Extension Project is also a significant case study for research and instruction in urban transportation planning due to the work of the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign clinical professor, Dr. Lou Turner, who could not be with us here today, but who is the Director of Research and Public Policy for Developing Communities Project over its work on the project. Let it further be noted that DCP's community organizing work included the historic 2005 referendum, which garnered 39,000 votes in support of DCP's effort to impel the city of Chicago to prioritize funding for the Red Line Extension Project. It was DCP which successfully advocated for then U.S. Senator Barack Obama and his Senate office to file the paperwork to include the project in the 2005 federal transportation bill. Finally, number three, the work of Developing Communities Project, including its significant body of work on the CTA Red Line extension, is in the process of being included in the Vivian Harsh collection in the Woodson Regional Library of Chicago Public Library Systems, so that the world may learn from this vital community effort and collaborative partnership. And so as we conclude, we're reminded of the lyrics of James Weldon Johnson's beautiful effort to capture our many fights for justice and equal parity in all forms. He wrote, "Stony the road we trod, bitter the chastening rod, felt in the days when hope unborn had died. Yet with a steady beat have not our weary feet come to the place for which our fathers sighed." This echoes the struggle of Developing Communities Projects and its tireless efforts, which snatched the reality of the Red Line extension from the jaws of promises and procrastination. Many of us have learned with great consternation that the wheels of justice often turns ever so slowly. And we learn that that also includes the wheels of the Red Line extension. Yet today we can say to our friends on the far south side and all the way to Altgeld Gardens and Eden Greens that you are not some disconnected foreign entity of inconvenience, but that you are tax-paying citizens worthy of a public transportation system which addresses your daily transportation needs as well as anyone else's. And so, to all of those who have helped us and fought with us from the living and the dead, and to all of our elected and appointed officials. We say now, in the words of DCP's founding executive director, President Barack Obama, yes, we can. Yes, we can. Yes, we can. Thanks be to God who gives us the victory. Yes, we can.
Our next public comment is going to be Mr. David Joy from the Chicago Neighborhood Initiative.
All right, so I'm at a significant disadvantage following a politician and a pastor. I don't think I could ever come close to topping that, but thank you for your consideration today. This is a great day for the far south side of Chicago, a truly great day. And I just want to, first of all, say thank you to all of you on the board, as well as President Carter, for pulling this through. This has been 60 years in the making, 60 years. That's a generation and a half. And to see this happen today, this is an epic moment, and I think one that needs to be recorded and noted in the great history of Chicago. So my comments are pretty brief in terms of what this means for our community and for the communities that we've been working in. And this has already been touched on, but certainly the question of equity. I often say, we have visitors that come and tour the area, and people's first question is, am I still in Chicago? People have this misconception that the city literally stops at 95th Street. And no disrespect, but right now, if you look at many of the CTA maps, they do stop at 95th Street. And so extending this to the full limits of the city is both equitable, but it's also, I think, it's important to note that is happening today. The second is economic development. This is an opportunity to bring unprecedented levels of economic development to an area of the city that has been written off. It's literally been dumped on. I see my friend Cheryl Johnson here, who gives great tours of the toxic waste sites that literally dot our landscape. And so to bring this kind of opportunity and economic development, again, is unprecedented, not only in terms of the jobs that are going to be created, but the retail and the industrial and all the other commercial development that are going to happen around these new L stops is really unprecedented. And I would say, thirdly, this has the opportunity to leverage literally billions of dollars of new investment. So not only is the investment in the red line significant, the $4 billion that you're committing, but we expect that that's going to then leverage billions of dollars of additional investment. And so we're working right now on a proposal to the MacArthur Foundation. They have this grant called the 100 and Change. It's like the Olympics for grants. It's a $100 million grant. It's competitive internationally, and working with the CTA and also now the Quantum campus at the old U.S. Steel site. We're anchoring this application in those two massive public and private investments. And so we've got another couple of weeks before that's due, but we're putting that together in the hopes to be able to leverage that resource as a way to spur development in this area as well. So again, I want to thank the CTA board. I want to say congratulations. And again, this is a great, great day for the far south side. Thank you.
And our last public comment is Mr. Abraham Lacy, who is president of the Far South Community Development Corporation.
Good morning, everyone. First and foremost, I want to thank the staff of CTA because this is an unusual day. They're accommodating both my boys in the back room. So anytime you bring me to a meeting and accommodate my kids in the back room, appreciate you. To the chairman, to the board, to President Carter, and to your staff, this has been a long time coming. As a proud member and worker in the 21st Ward, go 21st Ward, as a proud member who's been working there for the past 15 years. I was there as the Reverend put forth with Developing Communities Project. I was in the churches working with UIC, the late Janet Smith, who was working to get the plans together for the CTA to bring equity to this community for a very long time. I was working with others in the neighborhood and working with other workforce agencies in the neighborhood. We're always begging the question of, are we ready for a big investment like this? Are the people ready for an investment like this? And for one, I know that there's a lot of naysayers. You guys have probably all heard it in the papers and seen it in the news. For one, I want to say this, because I can quote you the stats, which we all know, which everyone back here knows. But I will say this one thing, that I'm very proud of all of you. I'm very proud of your commitment to this work. This brings joy to my heart and to the family members that I have living in this neighborhood and to those who I work in contract with who see new opportunity. I can guarantee you that everyone is looking at this as a big win. Yes, it has been a long time coming, but we can go back in time, or we can look at what we have in front of us. As Mr. Doig has put it, the leveraging and the ability to leverage such a massive investment. This is the largest public infrastructure investment almost in Chicago's history. That's going to be based right here on the far south side. That is what true transformation is. And President Carter, you stuck with it. Proud of you, brother. You stuck with it in the midst of a global pandemic. Unheard of, where a lot of the reports were saying, scrap it, there's no validity to it. You stuck with it, heard the cries of the people. When you're working in Oak Guild and you have to travel an hour and a half just to get to the next nearest transit, you have to take several buses to get around. That is unimaginable in the third largest city in the country. So when we're talking about, and I'm all for investing in throughout the city, but the far south side has seen the least amount of investment over the past 40 years. When investment does come, it's usually the scraps. You, President Carter, turned around and said, no, we're going to make this investment. We're going to make this a priority. And we're proud of you of that. So despite the naysayers that many of you may encounter, I will say to you, you don't have the platform, the largest platform on the south side as others may have, and the resources to say so. But when opportunities like this comes around, we want to let you know the far south side has your back. And we will always have your back, and we'll always have your back because of what you decide to do for this neighborhood. We thank you. We can tell you, please keep the good work going. And thank you for watching my children. And to a more prosperous far south side. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, there are no other public comments.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Our next order of business on the agenda is our president's report, which will be given by our President Dorval Carter. Mr. Carter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the tissue. As you probably can tell, this is a very emotional day for me. I have two items I'm supposed to talk to you about today. First was the Democratic National Convention. Let me just sum it up by saying we're ready. We've done the work. We've met with the people. We've been coordinating with the city departments. We will be ready to put on the best face of public transportation for the entire country. I have the confidence and the capability of 10,000 employees, many of whom are led by the people you see in this room. We're all committed to making sure that CTA delivers on our ability to meet the needs of this convention. What I really want to talk about, to no surprise to any of you, is the red line extension. I certainly can't the words of the community that you heard here today, but I can tell you that I have felt those words over the course of my life. Since I became president of the CTA, I've had the opportunity to oversee almost $8 billion worth of investment in our transportation system. But during that entire time, my singular focus was getting to the place where we would be able to make this project happen. A lot of people talk about why I came back to Chicago, what it was that I was going to bring to the city. The special skills that I have, they're not in fixing a broken bus. They're not in running a train. They're not in rebuilding track. The special skill that I have is in getting money. And so I knew that if I put my mind to it, I could bring to the far south side of Chicago something that I have been hearing about since I was a kid. Yeah. The extension of the Red Line to the 130th Street. When I was a kid, I rode CTA just like everybody else. I didn't have a car. I had my paper city school pass, had to link because it had to last me through the entire school year. And it would fall apart because it'd be sitting in your sweaty pocket all day long. And I would take the bus and the train, go down to 95th Street. And my cousins played basketball at Mendel High School. Mendel's not there anymore, but for those of you who know, it's at 111th Street. The only way I could get there was to catch a bus, because there wasn't a train that would take me that far. And that was never fun, particularly in the middle of wintertime. It was like 20 degrees outside and everything else. But even back then, I remember hearing about how this train line was going to get extended. That one day there'd be a stop close to Mendel High School that I'd be able to go to. I've been hearing about that my entire life. I've been a part of this agency when there were previous discussions about making this happen that died. I was never in a position to influence that earlier in my career. And so when I finally got the chance, the opportunity, the blessing to become the head of CTA, I didn't have any doubt what my number one priority was going to be. It was going to be to make this project happen. It's been a long road. For those of you who don't remember, it all started really right after I started as president, when we had to go down to Springfield to get the legislation that would allow the city council to approve a TIF. For those of you who remember, back at that point in time, nothing was getting done in Springfield. You had a governor who hated the mayor wasn't all that thrilled with the governor. But the one piece of legislation that got done was the legislation that created a TIF. At the time, it was to fund the Red Purple Modernization Project. But I knew that there was more that we could do with that authority. And so I made sure when we created the legislation that it included the ability to also fund the Red Line extension. And also, even though we haven't gotten to it yet, the Forest Park branch of the Blue Line. There's another community that needs an investment to fix a transportation system that has been woefully broken for a long time. That then eventually led to the passage by City Council about a year ago, the TIF that created the funding to support the Red Line extension. And it now led to the point in time that we are at today. We're in a position to finally award a contract to build and construct this project. I couldn't be happier to get to this point in time. And I certainly understand that there are a lot of people who were sitting in this room way years ago when I said I'm going to build the Red Line extension, looked at me like, yeah, we've heard that before. But I'm happy to be able to deliver on that promise. You deserved this decades ago. And the fact that it took us this long to get here is an abomination. You're going to see a presentation in a few minutes that's going to talk about both the community's commitment as well as the impact of the lack of the ability to do this and what it has meant to that community. I think it's important to remember, regardless of how much this investment costs, it is long overdue. And is a down payment for the lack of investment we have made in this part of our city for decades. I'm excited to bring the far south side back into the fold, to make that community an integral part of the revenue that supports all the other great things that we want to live and enjoy in the city. I'm excited about the opportunity that it's going to create for the people who live in that community to be able to access all the great things that the city has to offer a whole lot more easier than they've ever been able to do before. I'm excited about the developments that's going to happen as a result of this investment that are going to transform this community for the residents of this community in ways that they will experience, that their kids will experience, that their grandchildren will experience for years to come. This is truly a legacy project. This is the type of project that is the reason why I do this work. This is the type of project that makes me understand the pain and the barriers and the challenges that we put up with every day and why it's all worth it. Because at the end of the day, what we do is more than just move people from point A to point B. We transform communities. And if the people who fund us don't understand that, then they're missing the whole point. So I look forward to the board's action on the project. I look forward to an even bigger event that we will plan later this year, when the federal government will provide us the grant for the federal funding of this project. I look forward to celebrating in a couple of days directly in your community the success and the milestone that we've achieved, that we can all recognize what we're going to be doing going forward together as we make this dream finally a reality. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Those conclude my remarks, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Reserve my comments till after the presentation. Any other board members?
Are there any other board members who'd like to comment at this time? Mr. Chairman, I think Director Eady?
Yes, I would. As the newest member to the board, I certainly want to congratulate and appreciate your perseverance. Certainly, I, as a youngster, my father had a business in the Roseland community there, Michigan Avenue. And I saw that community in its vibrancy at one time. But then over the years, I saw how it deteriorated. And I am certain that much of that was contributed to by the efforts of all of what you have put in place now to restore. And it's just very encouraging to me that I'm actually sitting on this board at this very pivotal time, and all of what I've heard about over the many decades as a youngster growing up and knowing all of those challenges that you are addressing. I just wanted to say I appreciate you, congratulate you, and certainly, as has been stated, the far South Side is going to be greatly benefited as a result of it. And certainly even too, to know of the economic impact that it's going to have, like unbelievable. And it's all because you were a diligent, persistent, persevering, and have a gift of getting money. And thank God you got your money. Yeah.
No, I forgot. One thing I wanted to share. This is the sign that we'll be putting out now in the very near future. So get ready for it, okay?
Get ready, get ready.
I hear you say that each one of the board members will get that sign.
Next item on the agenda is number 7, which is a presentation on the Red Line Extension Project by Bill Mooney, Michelle Kern, Juan Pablo Prieto, and Ellen McCormick.
Good morning still. I am Bill Mooney, your Chief Infrastructure Officer, and I'm joined today with
Ellen McCormick, Vice President of Purchasing and Supply Chain.
Juan Pablo Prieto, Director of Diversity Programs.
Michelle Curran, Deputy CFO and Controller.
we have truly the honor and privilege of being able to sit in front of you today and present this historic moment and talk about kind of the aspects of it. I would be remiss to not take a second and recognize the immense amount of people on my team, Ellen's team, Juan Pablo's, Michelle's team, who have helped prop us up at this moment in time and bring this forward.
Sorry, hold on one moment. You won't hear him? I didn't think so. Is there a way that we can possibly move this mic to that table so they can hear in the back?
Sure. Well, maybe not. Vita?
Chairman and our voices are big enough that they can hear. No, if you can move this, is this?
They want it to be for Bill
So
Moon.
that they can hear, right, because they can't hear.
Take the
Hear in the back.
That better?
Yes.
So as I was saying, I would be remiss to not take a moment to recognize the immense amount of support that has come from a team below myself, Ellen, Juan Pablo, Michelle, who have worked tirelessly for years and years and years to bring forward and keep this alive and bring it forward for this moment. So I'm grateful for those efforts. I'm grateful for their commitments, their passion in transit in general and professionalism. So I just want to take that second. Now on to the really exciting stuff. As the lore goes, in 1969, then Mayor Daley stood on the end of the platform at 95th Street and said, today we go to 95th Street, tomorrow we'll be going to the city's edge. And for almost 60 years, the community has been waiting for that moment. In 1969, the original Dan Ryan branch construction cost $38 million. It took us from the Loop to 95th Street. If we would have built the extension that we are talking about building today, same infrastructure at the same moment in time, it would have cost another $144 million. This investment for over 60 years here would have cost $144 million at that moment in history. Planning process formally began in 2006 when the board took upon an alternatives analysis request of staff, which is really the first step in the federal process to secure money for projects like this. When we entered our formal planning request in 2016, the budget for this project was $2.3 billion, from $144 million to $2.3 billion. We entered engineering, which is the next step formally in the federal process in 2021. We got our federal share locked. The budget had increased to $3.6 billion. At that point in time, all this exclusive of things like financing charges, this is the brick and mortar construction costs that we were envisioning for this project at the year of expenditure when we were building. We were in a very dynamic moment in time in history coming in this post-COVID market, and we were trying to manage towards those costs and managing those increases accordingly. As you've heard today, and there's no greater exhibit to the tireless, passionate work of a community than this moment in here. And we talked earlier about the November 2004 ballot referendum that was brought forward by the community to hold the politicians to the fire to study this moment. 38,000 voters came out in support of this, and ultimately the board took action in 2006 in directing an alternatives analysis for that point. In 60 years, little progress was made, not nearly to the scale of what has happened in the last 5. Under President Carter's leadership and leadership of this board, we have moved forward mountains of paper and hours of tireless sleep and meetings, planning, conversations about this. We've secured our local match in our TIF. We've secured our federal commitments, and we are on the brink of a reality that everyone has been waiting for. We are building a 5.6-mile red line extension that will come out of 95th Street through the yard, over the highway, and take us down to Alco Gardens and City's Edge at 130th Street. It will include 4 new stations at 103rd Street, 111th Street, Michigan Avenue, 130th Street. These will be fully accessible access to rail in this community where they do not have fully accessible rail route. This will be intermodal facilities that include bike parking, walk-up connections. To the advisory's comment earlier about path of travel access here to these stations, taking into consideration those walk-up points, divvy and other connection points for that full access. In the future, the board will be considering as part of this project a new build for a train storage yard at 120th Street, which will be coming in the short term too. At the heart of this are our 5 pillars of what we're trying to accomplish with this project. And no more important is the first one. 24% of the RLE project area residents live below the poverty line. This is an equity project. It stands as an equity project and will always be at the heart of an equity project. We are looking to give people back an hour of their life. 30 minutes travel time downtown and back in their day. That's an hour that they get to spend with their families, an hour that they get to do things with their kids, an hour that they get to do other activities like reading books or pursuing the great outdoors down at Bovian Woods on it. This is about connectivity of a community that doesn't have the ability to have other options. You heard the alderman talk about the decisions people make when they're housing down there and the need to have access to cars to be able to make it to the grocery store and do other things. But when you talk about the first issue here around equity, that becomes even a greater challenge. This is about economic opportunity. You heard David talk about the investment and beyond the investment. I've often said, and I've heard many of the members and President Carter speak, right? The project begins the day we open the line. It doesn't begin the day we put the shovel on the ground. It's about the community growing out from beyond that. Director, you asked earlier about the transit support development plan and the importance around that and the vision forward from the ground from this investment. And ultimately, one of the greatest things about transit is the ability to create sustainability. There is no greater green initiative in the city of Chicago than just having transit available to you. We talk about the benefits in these 5 pillars that break down into numbers. So we look at what we can predict in jobs created due to construction. We're talking about 12,000 jobs estimated. Down the line from those 12,000 direct hammer swinging jobs, we have almost 60,000 jobs being able to support the project in the downstream, the manufacturing industry and the support services in the community as that project's going on. Even greater than that is the opportunity for 25,000 additional jobs that will become available for transit access. Nationally, for every $1 we spend on transit, you see $5 in economic growth in return. If there's never been a doubt about that, look outside our window down the street here. When we built this building in 2004, this was nothing here. Empty parking lots, and then we built a station at Morgan. And all of a sudden, now we are one of the most vibrant real estate markets in the entirety of the city of Chicago with the access to transit. At the heart of what we've envisioned for the future was a collaborative approach to transit supported development. We often talk about transit-oriented development, which is the properties directly adjacent to the station. But this was bigger than that. It was about how a community can seek growth and investment from there. How do you infill around there? How do you create opportunities for those communities? And it wasn't wanting to put a down payment on just a single piece, but really about having something thought about from day one with the community about how that investment grows out of it and not about an afterthought. We believe that transit supported development plan lays a roadmap for $1.7 billion in real estate activity in the RLE footprint following the Bridgeland project. 118,000 square feet of new retail space and opportunity, almost 3,500 infill housings, the great majority of which are affordable. We often talk about a picture speaks 1,000 words. So, Director, you talked about your time in Roseland on the South Michigan Avenue, the diamond on the south side that was as great and as magnificent as what was downtown's Mag Mile. You see it there in its heyday up north, and then you see a similar picture of it today as the community holds on and is breaking for this moment in the future. We talk about looking towards that moment, right? This is the vision. This is what the transit supportive brings forward as a vision for a community to build out of. So it's been a very, very long journey to get this right, almost 60 years. And really the really focal point of the last 3 years has been about getting us to this award date. So we were able to secure our transit TIF. We were able to secure our entry into engineering, which set our federal share and a commitment to move this project forward. We're on the brink of issuing this contract at this moment in time. And in the near future, as President Carter outlined, we'll secure our full funding grant agreement and be able to start construction, with us looking to open service in 2030. So one of the items we wanted to highlight as we talked about this is the board will be taking on an action to discuss kind of an increase to the budget of this project. I wanted to give some background about where that's being driven from. The chart here shows the national highway construction cost industry. This is a metric that the U.S. Department of Transportation publishes. It's a rear-looking metric that looks back at the cost of construction projects in the highway market over a period of time. This is a 20-year representation that takes us through all of the end of 2023 at this point in time. Over 20 years, you can see a fairly steady kind of period of growth that would be predictable to grow similar to what an inflationary growth of a market would be. Some spikes here and there, but pretty typical. Then COVID hits. The construction industry completely changed post-COVID. Everything that was ever predictable about how projects were able to be estimated and the assumptions around building those projects changed. You can see on the point there, in 2021, we entered our entry to engineering budget of $3.6 billion exclusive of the financing charges, right? In that time period from 2021 to 2023, the cost of construction projects went up 50% in a 2-year period. That is no longer a predictable inflationary growth. That is a change in true market conditions. The market evolved and became something different than what we walked into. There's lots of reasons why those conditions have evolved and changed, and many of you experience them firsthand in your daily lives, right? I was talking with somebody yesterday how I have a credit card limit that my wife and I set when we first kind of got married. It says like these are scary alert type things. We set it at a certain lower threshold that we want to be alerted if something shows up on our credit card there, right? Our grocery bill every week exceeds that limit now, which was never an occurrence we had ever experienced pre-pandemic, right? That's something that has fundamentally changed in the market condition that isn't directly driven by an inflation growth, right? We talked earlier about in the pandemic, material supplies. We all experienced that we were locked at home. We decided to do some home improvement projects. And the 2x4 that we bought in February, which was a $2 board, all of a sudden became a $24 board overnight. Did it come back down? Sure. But did it come back down to $2? No. Did it come back down where you would have predicted it to be 3 years later with just natural inflation? No, it never did, right? So, and predicting which of those commodities were going to change drove a whole lot of uncertainty in projects and really changed the way contractors and the market looks at construction as a whole. The predictability of the supply chain, when the material will become available, who's going to be able to produce that material has become exceptionally volatile. As factories got shut down, as factories still recover, as they still get shut down. It's hard to manage a schedule of a project when you have material that you don't know when it's necessarily going to show up. And that creates a ton of risk around projects. It makes it hard for contractors to bid prices as competitively as they once did. As grateful as we are for the influx of federal money that has come with this, the influx of state money, the influx of all the money that we've seen to build and invest in our infrastructure, it has also caused the demand market on labor. Good bearing trade jobs. And part of the reason we do the work we do on workforce is to create an opportunity for trade opportunities to grow and invest in construction and trade. There's shortages, and contractors are now having to pay premiums to keep labor tight at their jobs to maintain their schedules. The contractors outsource a ton of investment early on in these projects. Before they're ever able to bill for those costs, they have to make down payments and they have to finance those charges. As you've all experienced in your own personal life, the interest rate market is very competitive right now and high rates. Makes the cost of money very expensive to support projects like that. And when we awarded our PM, talk about that, there was a real desire to do mega projects. It was the thing everybody was looking to get into. Now everybody's done some mega projects and there's not as big a desire anymore. So we're seeing reduced competition, not only because of the types of projects we're taking forward, but because of all that other investment we talked about. The airport's doing a massive modernization project, right? We're building on the other side of the city as well right now. So all that creates challenging competition for those contractors competing for the limited amount of jobs out there. One thing I am confident from the beginning of this presentation to the point in time we're talking is nothing will get cheaper with time. Reality is postponing our commitment today to this project will result in a 5-year delay of us taking this forward again, and it will be significantly more costly than what we're talking about today. This is not unique to us by any means. There's examples throughout the country. I won't dwell on any single one of these, but there's a series of projects throughout the country that have recently come to market or in the past for FFGA or received FFGAs that have seen significant project cost increases as they're grappling with the same challenges we are in this conversation. Here's the Silicon Valley line extension out in Santa Clara, a very similar 6-mile extension of what we're doing here. That's almost 37% increase from the time it went out to bid to when it finally awarded. Second Avenue subway in New York is getting ready to go in for its FFGA. It's a little further behind us at this point in the project, in the process there. And they've already seen, some pretty significant increases without even having awarded contracts yet, as they're trying to accommodate for this ever fluctuating market. Hudson Tunnel project in New York just recently received its FFGA, and from the time it submitted its entry into engineering to its final award, it increased its overall project budget almost 28%. Again, not having actually awarded a contract to date. Not having been to that mark, but just trying to anticipate what they're seeing in the same industries that we're all trying to manage to. Here's an example from the West Coast as well in LA that, from the time it issued its project award in early 2018 to the time it started building the costs, it saw significant overruns since that market condition change. It really was not something that could have been predicted when it was first awarded. Now, we often talk about kind of this moment in this award, but post-award, I just take a moment to look at kind of our history as an agency and our ability to manage to the keys of the car once you've given it to us. So you authorize us to have a contract, and we've proven time and time again that on major projects, we can bring them in within the budgets being allocated for them. I'm confident in our ability to bring that forward again. A lot of the actions we've talked about over the last 2 years and the board has given us authorization to proceed forward were really about managing risks around this project, risks that we would incur during construction, risks that help manage costs on this bid. Some of those things we talked a little bit about today, one of which was advanced real estate acquisition. So I highlighted that we were significantly bought out, being able to secure that real estate well in advance of the construction project, takes risk off the table, allows us to advance demolition, remediation efforts, and get that out of the way of the big contract build. Similarly, the board has authorized us to take on advanced utility coordination. This is where we're able to partner with an agency like with us and People's Gas to get their infrastructure out of the way of our projects, so that if they experience any delays in doing their work, it doesn't impact the bigger project. It allows us to manage that risk and partner on our partners as we move forward. We've separated packages for our mainline construction, which is what you're considering today, and our future yard and shop, which is a little more refined design for us and a little more, but also allows us to right size into the package to allow for another bidding period. So an even greater DBE work opportunities. When we began this procurement almost 2 years ago, let's pause on that. We started this conversation 2 years ago. We went out to industry and actually reached out to the contract community and asked for their feedback. Not only about what they were seeing around the industry, what types of things they would like to see in this project, but also posing, what would you like to see out of us? Like, you've all worked with us, and I often will say we are horrible people when it comes to work. We are very, very demanding in our needs, right? We are very, very hard on what we hold. So how can we be better partners to build together? We went through numerous FTA reviews. I could not tell you the volume of paper and process that goes through the federal granting program. The level of confidence you need to produce with the FTA that their investment will be returned with the project that you promised to deliver is immense. It's more along the you're guilty until proven innocent mentality than otherwise. And the amount of review in detail, we've often said in this room with 50 or 60 people going through in detail our risk matrix for this project and where they see the details on that, where they see our scope, where they see our costs, where they see our schedule as we go through this. And throughout this effort over multiple years, we've produced numerous rounds of value engineering as we continue to try and maintain the cost around this project. One of the most important aspects of what we've tried to do, there was an item we talked about last one, which is our cycle for unsuccessful bidders. The firms put forward a huge investment to apply for this. So I will say that the project teams that proposed here were exceptional. They're really wonderful. Professionalism and quality of those firms is just amazing. And they make a $20 to $30 million down payment on investment to be able to have the opportunity to build this project. Stipends help offset that and encourage them to continue to do innovative things and sharpen their pencils on these bids. With that, I'll pause and turn over to
Morning. While this is called a two-step procurement, we actually took many more steps during the course of this over 2-year process in an effort to achieve a highly competitive procurement. As mega procurements such as this are much more complicated than regular procurements, first thing that I did was to hire an expert in the area of mega procurements, Bob Brownstein, to advise us of best practices. The next step we took was to issue a request for industry comment in July of 2022 to elicit concerns and suggestions from the companies that routinely work in this area. Many of the comments we received from the 15 companies who responded were incorporated into the final RFP. The next step that purchasing made was to issue a request for qualifications in October of 2022. As the firms that responded to the RFQ were highly qualified, the evaluation committee recommended, and I approved their recommendation, that all of the firms that responded be deemed highly qualified and shortlisted for entry into the proposal phase of the procurement. In June of 2023, we issued a draft request for proposals, again seeking comments from industry experts. In September of 2023, purchasing issued the final request for proposals, which were due in April of 2024. Upon receipt of the proposals, the members of the evaluation committee, with advice from the technical and financial evaluation committee members, made the recommendation to me that both of the proposals move on to the negotiation phase of the procurement. Once I was satisfied with their explanation, I approved their recommendations. After an arduous negotiation period by the negotiating team, purchasing issued a request for best and final offers, which we received on July 22nd. Once again, the evaluation committee carefully examined the best and final offers we received, and again, with the advice of the negotiation committee, made their determination of which firm presented the best value to the CTA. The evaluation committee then sent me with a report detailing the reason of this selection. After reviewing the recommendation and asking for various clarifications and explanations, I again approved their recommendation to recommend award to the firm which offered a slightly better technical proposal and better pricing. I would like to take this time to congratulate my lead procurement administrator, Blanca Medina, and my director of purchasing, Maria Williams-Baxter, for their expertise and dedication in bringing the RLE contract to the board this morning. Thank you.
And without any further ado, staff is recommending that the board give consideration to Walsh Vinci Transit Community Partners for a lump sum price to build the Light Line extension of $2.7 billion. The contract we're asking you to consider today will also include $147 million in allowances that help us further manage risk within the contract budget. And the total award for consideration today of $2.9 billion. This includes a request for an increase in budget of approximately $1.16 billion. With that, I'll turn over to Michelle to talk a little bit about budgets.
Thank you, Bill. So this next slide here outlines the CIP amendment that's before the board this morning. We're proposing to amend the CIP to account for the increased construction costs as Bill just outlined. To remain on track to receive the full funding grant agreement later this year, CTA is required to show that all funding for the project is committed and approved by the board. The amendment would incorporate approximately $1.2 billion of additional CTA bonds, which are currently estimated to be issued in 2027, 2028, and in the out years of the current program, so post 2028. It's important to note that projects in the current CIP will not be impacted by the increased amount of bonds to be issued. You may have also heard that the project has received increased federal funding. What that really means is the funding for the project has been accelerated so that we receive the federal funding earlier in the project timeline. While it's not actually additional project funding, it does help reduce the financing costs, which are interest costs while the project is in construction. So this amendment will also include the reduction to the financing charges. And then just to walk through the table here briefly, the top portion of the table includes the current CIP funding plan for the project. We have 132 million of various federal sources allocated to the project, including funds from the Carbon Reduction Program, FTA Areas of Persistent Poverty, HUD Community Project Funding, and Congestion Mitigation Air Quality. Of these funds, 2 million was included in prior CIP years, and 130 million is included in the 2024 to 2028 CIP. In addition, we have the local share match, which includes State of Illinois PAYGO funding, CTA bonds, and the financing costs, which I just talked about. We have 282 million of state funding program for the project in the 2024 to 28 CIP. And for the CTA bonds, we have previously programmed 98.7 million in prior years, and those bonds have already been issued. We have 1.25 billion programmed in the 2024 to 2028 CIP, which includes a portion of the additional 1.2 billion that we're adding to the CIP here and 309 million in the out years of the CIP. The financing costs also include 136.2 million in the current 5-year CIP, as well as an additional 193.9 million in the out years. And the bottom portion of the table is the expected future amendments to the CIP for the RLE project. Once the FFGA is awarded, we will need to amend the CIP to include the nearly 2 billion of FFGA funding, as well as the 950 million from the City of Chicago Transit TIP. These funds cannot be programmed into the CIP until the FFGA is actually awarded. I'll turn it back over to Bill.
I wanted to give you a little background to the team that we're asking you to give consideration to it today in this contract. Walsh is one of the biggest lead on the joint venture, is multiple mega projects within the City of Chicago. It's a Chicago firm around for many, many years. They are a partner, as you often hear monthly, on our retrofit modernization project on the north side. For their partnership on this job, they joined with an international firm in Vinci. Vinci is in over $50 billion worth of design build projects in over 42 countries, as well as numerous projects throughout the US. Their lead designer team, it consists of Sistra, who is also a partner of theirs on the mega project up north, and has done a bunch of transit work throughout the country. Well, this is some of the first work they've done with CTA up on RPM. And EXP, who's a local architectural firm and engineering firm, who is also working in the railroad modernization, but has an immense amount of CTA experience. I would highlight some of the more notable architectural features, award-winning stations at Washington and Wabash and 95th Street. It is a really, really strong team, a team that we're very proud to bring forward. With that, I'll turn it over to Juan Pablo to talk a little bit about the DB and local.
Thank you, Bill. Good morning again, directors. With the context that you've been provided about RLE and keeping that in mind, we recognize that how we build is just important as what we build. We want to continue leveraging our infrastructure upgrades and investments to help small businesses and career seekers grow and create generational wealth. In order to maximize DB opportunities, the design build contract includes a 25% goal for design and a 22% goal for construction. The RFP also included our diversity outreach plan, which asks proposers to outline how they are going to support the DBE community and bring a diverse team of DBEs to the contract. It also includes credit for mentor protege programs that help DBEs grow in capacity and capabilities. The diversity programs team, along with the RLE team, has been very busy informing potential DBE firms about the certification process so that we can expand the pool of DBE firms. We continue to encourage firms to submit their DBE certification applications, which they can do with any of the 5 agencies that certify DBEs in Illinois that include IDOT, the City of Chicago, Metra, PACE, and CTA. As Bill mentioned, we'll break ground in late 2025, so there's still time for firms to get certified before trade work packages are advertised. We will continue our aggressive outreach strategy, including hosting a Meet the Contractors event to introduce the Walsh Vinci team to the DBE community, and our second round of roadshows where we attend our technical assistant agencies membership meetings. We conducted our first round when we announced the shortlist to let the DBE community know that RLE was coming and to get ready. And now that we've selected it, for the board, if the board approves, we'll take that team back around to the same membership meetings so that they can introduce themselves to the community and start networking. Walsh Vinci is committed to meeting the DBE goals in the contract, and each joint venture partner has pledged to provide mentorship to a DBE firm for the duration of the project. Next slide, please. They've also identified two DBE firms, GMA and Toro Construction, to oversee the erection of the permanent station work. The reason this is significant is because these are essentially prime contracting opportunities within the project that will make both GMA and Toro competitive to bid as prime contractors on future CTA projects. This is in line with our commitment to increase the opportunities and support for DBEs to become prime contractors. Walsh Vinci also will conduct quarterly networking and educational events for DBEs to ensure they're aware of upcoming opportunities and how to bid with them. They're also committed to unbundling and right-sizing packages to create more opportunities for small businesses. This strategy has helped maximize opportunities on RPM and gives DBEs multiple chances to compete for packages. Next slide, please. We've also maximized workforce opportunities by setting workforce goals. I do want to highlight that this is the first design build contract to have a workforce goal on the design portion. 10% of the design hours must be performed by residents of economically disadvantaged areas, or EDAs, that fall within the CTA service area. The EDA zip codes the EDAs are zip codes with a median household income of $45,000 or less. For the trade labor, we have a 10% careers opportunity goal that creates opportunities for low-income workers that are either enrolled in the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, or WIOA program, or in Section 3. There's a 35% service area EDA goal and a 15% union apprentice goal to help create the next pipeline of trade workers. The diversity programs team has been working very hard to reach out to the EDA zip codes, including the RLE footprint, over the last 2 years to help residents start their careers in construction with opportunities that exist now, like RPM and the Forest Park rebuild, so that they can have the experience in the trades and be more competitive for the opportunities once we break ground on RLE. The Walsh Vinci team has committed to meeting the workforce goals in the contract and will host semi-annual career fairs in the EDA zip codes and the project footprint. Besides working with the CTA's workforce partners that will provide pre-apprenticeship training and placement services, the joint venture has committed to partnering with a host of organizations to assist career seekers. Through their diversity outreach plan, Walsh Vinci committed to hiring 3 interns for the design per design year and 3 construction interns during the summer during the construction. They also committed to funding an annual scholarship to assist STEM students that live in the EDA zip codes, as we did with RPM and the Elevating Futures Scholarship. Slide. We wanted to reemphasize that CTA did not wait for the design build contract to set DBE goals. As you can see on the chart, these are all the contracts associated with the red line extension, and we have been setting DBE goals throughout the project. I draw your attention to the bottom, as we anticipate awarding over $3.2 billion in contracts, and the DBEs are committed to being awarded over $766 million in contracts. This project will make a lasting impact in the DBE community. I also want to uplift and give a huge thank you to the diversity programs team who day in and day out show up ready to certify, advocate, and invest in our DBEs and career seekers. Without them, none of these achievements and initiatives would be possible. That concludes our presentation. We're happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Thank you to the entire RLE team for your presentation. This is a remarkable milestone for CTA. I know we say that a lot when it comes to this project, but every time we say it, it's really true. Because with every milestone we achieve, we're getting closer to making this long-awaited promise transformative reality to the far south side. Born on the west side, but a son of the south side, I have fond memories of exploring this great city and the opportunities it offered me. And public transportation made that possible. And I see the Red Line extension doing just that, opening a world of possibilities. Possibility for the residents and businesses of the far south side to enjoy thriving communities, and also possibility for the city of Chicago and our region to have a more equitable and connected public transit system that spurs economic development and job creation. I have to pause and tell you why this is also important to me. Because at 16 years old, I was in love. The problem was she lived on the far south end of the city. Dad said, get home at a certain time or there were consequences. You know, love can be foolish. So taking the number 34 was a slow boat home. But if we do this for anybody, do it for those young people that are in love. The Red Line extension is transformative and impactful so many levels. I give my full support for the measures before us today that will come to move this project forward. As chairman of this board, I'm aware and take full responsibility for our fiduciary duty to the public. What many of you may not know is that all of these directors have been thoroughly briefed on every aspect of this. So we take our fiduciary duty seriously because we've contemplated all aspects of this and staff has shared with us and has gone into full detail every aspect of this project. We've had an opportunity to ask the right questions and probe them and ask them, hey, how far are we here in terms of timeline? And are we on target? And they've done an extraordinary job of responding and answering all of our questions. So today we take that fiduciary duty seriously. The benefits of this project through equity, connectivity, economic development, and job creation far outweigh and will outlast the costs. As the presentation demonstrated, there's a cost to time. In this case, billions of dollars for a promise deferred decades ago. Deferring for another time will only add to the cost and risk the possibility that this project will never become a reality. The time is now for the Red Line extension. Lastly, I want to commend President Carter and his team for the incredible work you've achieved to get us to this point. President Carter shared that he came back to Chicago and this was heavily on his heart to fulfill the commitment and promise that was made more than 50 years ago. Commend you for your effort, not only for the time and attention to the financial and procurement aspects of this project, but also the heart and effort into entering partnerships with communities, with the communities there, to capture the vision of what they wanted to see. So it wasn't just us imposing upon the community. We sat down at the table and engaged the community to see what they wanted to see. Congratulations on this historic step in the project. And I look forward to casting my vote in favor of moving RLE forward. Thank you. Any other comments from any other director?
Director Requejo.
Just briefly, I wanted to build on those comments and President Carter's. And first of all, I wanted to thank everyone here in this room, giving us your morning. Many of you are residents of the far south side, and you didn't have a train to come here because this is what this is about. And you're giving us a lot of your time today. It's super important to hear your voice, and we appreciate your time and you all being here. Red Line Extension Coalition, the Advisory Council for the Red Line Extension, and the Transit Supported Development Plan coalition. And I would like to thank you all because you are the ones who made this happen. No, this to CTA at all. But this wouldn't have happened without all those generations of people pushing for this. President Carter called this delay an abomination, and I want to call it an abomination too. In not only that the timeline is abominable, but what you all are asking is normal. You're not asking for anything special. You just want what the far north side has, right? I was a resident in the far north side for many years, and all people are asking is having access to train stop, to a bus, to a coffee shop, to a grocery store. This shouldn't be that long and so complicated. But thank you for that. And I hope you will continue guiding the project as you have done in the past, and that you will keep us all accountable to the project. Second, thank you to CTA, President Carter, your leadership team, and the hundreds of staff that I'm assuming over the years have touched this project to take us here. That's a lot of work that happens 99% behind the scenes, because that's how CTA is. They don't like take a lot of credit for things. But we see you and we're here for you. As you know, I am personally here for you as a board member. And finally, an ask. So to make an ask, because I don't think this is just a far south side project. This is a whole city project, a whole region project. And there are a lot of people here today, but there are a lot of people who are not here. And they can be the ones helping this happen or be an obstacle. So I wanted to ask all those folks, public agencies, federal government, state, city departments, private sector, civic, community transit advocates, community organizers, to please help us move all of this forward. There is no way to get all of this done without a strong, united front to make the case for this to happen. And to me, this slide that I want to keep with me, the slide in this presentation is the most important for CTA colleagues, is the calendar, right? We need to accelerate this. It's been 60 years, and whatever we can do to accelerate with those shovels in the ground and ensure not only that this happens fast now that we have planned it, but also that the benefits return first and foremost to the community. And I'm not talking only about the jobs. That is very important that they are local jobs, but also the plan around it, the real estate around it. This would be a great opportunity for building community wealth, or it could be an opportunity for a speculation and investors coming from outside and taking away from community. So we need to keep an eye on both things. And I remain committed to help figure out how to make sure that those dollars and that wealth stays in the community. So thanks everyone for the huge endeavor, and looking forward to moving this fast to the finish line.
Yeah, I mean, most has been said about, how historic this moment is. So I just want to add, let's talk about, are there any blockers that are going to impact on getting us started? I loved where you said we start breaking ground. I think we need to accelerate. And what is the cost of inaction? I think we paid enough. I think it's time to move. There is no greater joy than bringing the city together. And I think as much as what this is bringing, it's also what the city of Chicago is going to offer in the future. And that's not just the South Side benefiting. And I think a lot of times we focus on one community and lose the benefits that this entire city is getting. This is not about justifying this investment. I think we are well. Thank you also for such great length that you went into financing, how we're going to pay for this, what's the cost of inaction, what it would have taken versus every day that we're delaying this is going to cost us. It's costing the entire city of Chicago. It's not just one community. So let's be clear on that we're all benefiting from this. And thank you for bringing all of the information to getting to this point. I remember when I started on the board, that was one of the first things we talked about was the community engagement part of this. the number of interviews, the number of people coming together in terms of identifying properties, doing things with the community in mind. It's a collaboration, and we don't talk about that aspect of it. We're focused on cost, we're focused on effort. But what it has gotten based off of the public comments today is very, very clear, right? And please keep coming back, because public comments are one of those things where we can get the good, the bad, and the ugly out and open, where we can collaborate and have an open dialogue. So let's keep that open. But let's also not forget the amount of work that has gone on in terms of just getting this community together. And it's not just us driving this, it's truly a collaborative effort. And thank you so much I feel privileged to just be sitting here today and being part of this historical moment. Thank you.
Director Jakes?
Well, when all has been said and done and there's nothing left to say or do, I'm ready to vote.
Thank you. Director Lee?
I was gonna say the same thing. Let's do this.
Director Eady?
Well, I think I made my comments earlier, but I do have one question. What helped me to know the timeline for notification after this is, say, submitted? Usually.
So the timeline for the project notification in general?
Yeah.
The word travels fast, right? I mean, we've got the network here right now, so we're going to celebrate a lot of this good news today, and we'll go back and we'll reverberate. So we've been on the community for a very, very long time. We actually are already starting that advanced work I talked about earlier. We had community meetings a couple months ago that talked about the various packages that are coming this fall. So we actually start doing some work this fall with our events utility and some of the demolition properties that we bought. And then, we'll be hitting the show, and I think we're looking to get in September. And as soon as we can get notice to proceed to our contractors, get them out in the community, start talking about what they're building for us and who's going to build it with them.
Okay, good. Well, that's it for me.
Thank you. May I have a motion to approve an ordinance, amending ordinance 023-131, approving the fiscal years 2024, 2028 capital improvement program.
Second.
It's been moved by Director Shaw, seconded by Director Eady to approve the ordinance amending ordinance 023-131, approving the fiscal years 2024 through 2028 capital improvement program. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Raquejo?
Yes.
Director Shaw?
Yes.
Chairman Barclay?
Yes.
Director Jakes?
Yes.
Director Lee?
Yes.
Director Eady?
Yes.
The motion passes.
Thank you. May I have a motion to approve an ordinance authorizing the award of a contract for design build services for the Red Line Extension Project?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Director Shaw, seconded by Director Eady to approve an ordinance authorizing the award of a contract for design build services for the Red Line Extension Project. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Raquejo?
Yes.
Director Shaw?
Yes.
Chairman Barclay?
Yes.
Director Jakes?
Yes.
Director Lee?
Yes.
Director Eady?
Yes.
The motion passes.
Next order of business is executive session. Council Frey.
Yes, we will have an executive session today, Chairman, under the Illinois Open Meetings Act, Section 2C 1121.
Guess that was benediction, huh?
Yeah, see, that's how it goes, It's just like church.
Yes.
I will now entertain a motion to recess into executive sessions for reasons stated by council.
Second.
It's been moved by Director Shaw, seconded by Director Eady that the board recess into executive session. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Raquejo? Director Shaw? Chairman Barclay?
Yes.
Director Jakes?
Yes.
Director Lee?
Yes.
Director Eady?
Yes.
Chairman Barclay, the motion passes. Yeah.
Second.
Oh, sorry. It's been moved by Director John, seconded by Director Jakes. That the board return to open session. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Raquel?
Yes.
Director Ja?
Yes.
Chairman Barclay?
Yes.
Director Jakes?
Yes.
Director Lee?
Yes.
And we'll note for the record that Director Edie has left the room, but the vote does pass.
We will now address board agenda item 8A. Kent?
Item 8A, the board reviewed the closed session meeting minutes for July 17th, 2024. Chair.
May I have a motion? May I please have a motion to approve the closed session minutes for July 17th, 2024?
So move.
Second.
It's been moved by Director Ja, seconded by Director Jakes, that we approve the closed session meetings for July 17th, 2024. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Raquel?
Yes.
Director Ja?
Yes.
Chairman Barclay?
Yes.
Director Jakes?
Yes.
Director Lee?
2, 3, 4.
Motion passes. And we will note for the record that Director Lee abstained and that Director Edie did not vote.
Now address agenda item 8B.
In connection with board agenda item 8B, the board reviewed an ordinance authorizing execution of a collective bargaining agreement containing the terms of a tentative agreement with the International Brotherhood of Local 700 for the construction project managers.
Thank you, Kent. May I have a motion to adopt ordinance authorizing the execution of a collective bargaining agreement containing the terms of a tentative agreement with the International Brotherhood of Teamsters Local 700 construction project managers?
So move.
Second.
It's been moved by Director Ja, seconded by Director Edie, that the board adopt the ordinance authorizing the execution of the collective bargaining agreement with the International Brotherhood of Teamsters Local 700 construction project managers. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Raquel?
Yes.
Director Ja?
Yes.
Chairman Barclay? Director Jakes?
Yes.
Director Lee?
Yes.
Director Edie?
Yes.
The motion passes.
We will now address agenda item number 8C.
With board agenda item 8C, Chairman, the board reviewed an ordinance authorizing execution of a collective bargaining agreement containing the terms of a tentative agreement with the Bridge Structural and Reinforcing Iron Workers Union Local Number 1.
Thank you, Kent. May I have a motion to adopt the ordinance authorizing the execution of a collective bargaining agreement containing the terms of a tentative agreement with the Bridge Structural and Reinforcing Iron Workers Local Union Number 1?
So move.
Second.
It's been moved by Director Ja, seconded by Director Edie, that the board adopt the ordinance authorizing the execution of the collective bargaining agreement containing the terms of a tentative agreement with the Bridge Structural and Reinforcing Iron Workers Local Union Number 1. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Raquel?
Yes.
Director Ja?
Yes.
Chairman Barclay?
Yes.
Director Jakes?
Yes.
Director Lee?
Yes.
Director Edie?
Yes.
The motion passes.
We will now address board agenda item number 9, board matters. Georgette, do we have any board matters today?
Mr. Chairman, today we have 2 board matters. Agenda item number 9A is an ordinance approving the amendments of the Chicago Transit Authority's Ethics Committee, Rules and Regulations and Investigation Procedures. And agenda number 9B is to approve an ordinance appointing Thomas J. McCone as treasurer of the Chicago Transit Authority.
Thank you. May I have a motion to approve the amendments of the Chicago Transit Authority Ethics Committee Rules and Regulations and Investigation Procedure?
So move.
Second.
It's been moved by Director Ja, seconded by Director Edie, that the board approve the amendments of the Chicago Transit Authority's Ethics Committee's Rules and Regulations and Investigation Procedures. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Raquel?
Yes.
Director Ja?
Yes.
Chairman Barclay?
Yes.
Director Jakes?
Yes.
Director Lee?
Yes.
Director Edie?
Yes.
The motion passes.
May I have a motion to approve an ordinance appointing Thomas J. McCone, treasurer of the Chicago Transit Authority?
So move.
Second.
It's been moved by Director Ja, seconded by Director Edie, that Thomas J. McCone be approved as treasurer of the ordinance appointing Thomas J. McCone as treasurer of the Chicago Transit Authority be approved. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Raquel?
Yes.
Director Ja,
Yes.
Chairman Barclay,
Yes.
Director Jakes.
Yes.
Director Lee,
Yes.
Director Eady.
Yes.
The motion passes.
Our next order of business is a report from the Committee on Finance, Audit, and Budget.
Mr. Chairman, the committee met earlier this morning and approved the July 17th, 2024 committee minutes and reviewed the finance report. Committee reviewed 3 ordinances. 1, review of an ordinance authorizing the purchase of real property located at 11900 South Cottage Grove Avenue, Chicago, Illinois, of a red line extension project. 2, review of an ordinance consenting to the amendment of the boundary of the Newport Avenue Landmark District, which includes Chicago Transit Authority property located at 945-953 West Newport Avenue, Chicago, red line. 3rd, review of an ordinance authorizing a license agreement with Jamil Salman, Salman, for real property located at 6052 South Calumet Avenue /320-332 East 61st Street, Chicago, and authorizing the acquisition of the property. Committee also reviewed 11 contracts. Committee placed the 3 ordinances and 11 of the contracts on the omnibus. Committee approved and recommended for board approval 3 ordinances and the 11 contracts. This concludes the report of the Finance, Audit, and Budget Committee.
Thank you, Director Jakes. I will now entertain a motion to approve the omnibus.
So move.
Second.
It's been moved by Director Ja, seconded by Director Eady, that the omnibus be approved. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Raquel,
Yes.
Director Ja,
Yes.
Chairman Barclay,
Yes.
Director Jakes.
Yes.
Director Eady.
Yes.
The motion passes.
My understanding, we're deferring the construction report this month.
Director Ja, Chairman Barclay, we would love to process a motion to defer from the agenda the construction report for this month. Director Ja, do you move that?
Oh.
Director Eady? It's been moved by Director Ja, seconded by Director Eady, that the construction report on the agenda for this month be deferred. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Raquel?
Yes.
Director Ja? Chairman Barclay?
Yes.
Director Jakes?
Yes.
Director Lee?
Yes.
Director Eady?
Yes.
The motion to defer the construction report from the agenda passes.
Our final order of business is new business. Georgette, is there any new business?
Chairman Barclay, there is no new business.
So there's no further business to come before the board. May I have a motion to adjourn the Chicago Transit Board meeting of August 14th, 2024.
So move.
Second.
It's been moved by Director Ja, seconded by Director Eady, that the regular CTA Transit Board meeting for August 14th, 2024 be adjourned. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Raquel?
Yes.
Director Ja?
Yes.
Chairman Barclay? Director Jakes?
Yes.
Director Lee?
Yes.
Director Eady?
Yes.
The motion passes.
Meeting is adjourned.
Yeah.